Takulandirani ku AMTV Malawi kuchimake kwa nkhani zenizeni. Ngati nkhani imeneyo kuno kulibe, dziwani kuti nkhani imeneyo ndi yabodza.
Ronald Sweeney, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy Parliament.
Thank you so much. I think let me proceed to introduce our commissioners before asking the Deputy Executive Secretary for his welcome remarks. So we have Commissioner Dr. Matisse, my immediate left. We have Commissioner Mhrc. Then we have Commissioner Lois, who is also acting chairperson. We have Commissioner Kavala. And then we have Commissioner Wemi Lois. We might be joined by Commissioner Marela, but at the moment, these are the commissioners that are leading the presentation of the interim report this morning. Having said that, allow me to, I know some are doing that today. Okay, before the TS comes in, maybe just some quick introductions to those that have just joined us.
Questions coming from the
Thank you so much, Ms. Kisi, Ms. moderating this session. Let me join also in that of the Commission to welcome all of you to this briefing session organized by the Malawi Human Rights Commission. So as a Commission, we want to thank you for taking your time, that you can join us, you can be with us. We don't take it for granted. This time people, we are busy. So you are taking time to come and join us. We appreciate for that gesture. As you are aware that all of you, that the Commission deployed these observers during this presidential, parliamentary and the local government elections that took place on the 16th September. We make some observation. We have teams that were deployed across the country, and at this time we have prepared our interim report. So we want to share with you regarding our observations as an interim report. So let me also be quick to mention that this is an interim report. We are going to produce a full report that will also be shared in the due course. So for now, let me ask Commissioner Kavala to lead us in presenting the interim report. Over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will now present the interim report. Introduction. Malawi held presidential, parliamentary, and local government elections on the 16th of September 2025. The elections offered an opportunity for the people of Malawi to exercise their democratic right in electing leaders of their choice, as provided for under Section 40 of the Constitution of the Republic of Malawi. In this interim report, the Commission accounts for its assessment of the electoral processes from the time of pre-voting, voting, up to the time of tabulation and announcement of results at the district level. The Malawi Human Rights Commission is a national human rights institution established under Section 129 of the Constitution and accredited with A status by the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions, GANRI. Its primary mandate is the investigation, protection, and the promotion of human rights in Malawi. The Commission's functions and responsibilities are outlined in the Human Rights Commission Act. Under Section 13 of the Act, the Commission is expected to act as a source of human rights information to the government and the people of Malawi. It is also expected to promote the rights of vulnerable groups such as children, illiterate persons, persons with disabilities, and the elderly. Election observation process. The Commission deployed election observers in 27 districts. The Commission also observed prison-based polling centers with special interest. The major reason for this is that although prisoners are allowed to vote in elections, they are usually not accorded the relevant information, and some potential voters are left out of the process. The Commission, therefore, wanted to appreciate the prevailing conditions in which prisoners and other detained persons exercise their right to vote. To ensure consistency in the election observation process, the Commission developed election observation tools used to collect data. A total of 10 human rights parameters were employed to guide the monitoring, and these include political participation, rights of vulnerable groups, including women, children, persons with disabilities, and the elderly, freedom of expression, personal freedom and security, freedom from discrimination, the right to property, the right to life, media freedom, right to information, economic and social rights. These tools were also designed to align with the on-the-ground election observation. The Commission further identified 6 major thematic indicators for observation as follows: electoral environment on polling day, start of polling, conduct of the polling process, closing of polling, counting, and announcement of results. The Commission documented the following observations. Pre-election phase. The pre-election phase was relatively peaceful. Most candidates were able to conduct campaign meetings. However, there were reports of the destruction of campaign materials and the use of hate speech on social media platforms targeting political candidates. In comparison to the 2019 and 2020 elections, this year was peaceful except for a few incidents in Lilongwe, Mzuzu, Mangochi, Machinga, and Blantyre districts. The Commission did not receive any reports of campaigning beyond the official campaign period. While a peaceful pre-election phase is a positive indicator, the reports of destroyed campaign materials and hate speech on social media represent violations of fundamental human rights. The destruction of campaign materials undermines a candidate's ability to communicate their message, while hate speech on social media creates an environment of hostility and can incite violence. The state has an obligation to protect these rights and ensure that all political parties and candidates have an opportunity to campaign freely and safely. The noted incidents, even if isolated, are a concern as they can deter candidates and from full participation and undermine the integrity of the elections. Delivery of polling materials and deployment of polling staff. Polling materials were timely delivered by May. Materials were inspected on Monday, 15th September 2025, the day before the election were held. However, In a few instances, there were disagreements between polling officials on one hand and candidates and the party representatives on the inspection of ballot papers, with some arguing that ballot papers could only be inspected on the polling day. This led to some delays in the opening of the voting on the polling day. They were isolated but notable issues with polling materials and center conditions. For instance, most polling centers lacked proper shelter, forcing polling staff and voters to sit in the scorching sun. In some polling centers, polling stations were not properly marked and ushers were in short supply. This created some problems in managing queues. The timely delivery of adequate materials is a positive step towards ensuring the right to vote is protected. However, the delays caused by disagreements over ballot paper inspection and the lack of proper shelter in some areas raise concerns about voter experience and efficient administration of the election. Conditions that force voters to endure harsh elements, such as sitting in the sun, is a form of deterrent to participation, particularly for vulnerable groups such as women, older persons, and persons with disabilities. Mhrc has a responsibility to ensure that voting centers are accessible and provide dignified conditions for all citizens to exercise their right to vote. It was also concerning that in some instances, there was no deliberate communication about the availability of voting materials for persons with disabilities. Voter turnout. The Commission observed a good turnout of voters across most polling stations, especially in the morning hours. People came out to vote, and the Commission observed long queues in most of the centers that were visited by its observers. The actual voter turnout will be released by Mhrc. A high voter turnout is a positive indicator on the public's engagement with their right to political participation and the democratic process. It signifies that citizens are actively exercising their right to vote and have confidence in the electoral process. The presence of long queues, while a sign of high turnout, also suggests a need for more efficient and well-resourced electoral process to ensure that all voters can cast their ballot without undue delay. The state has an obligation to ensure the voting process is smooth, to encourage and facilitate the exercise of this fundamental human right. The voting process. During the voting process, the Commission observed the following: location and accessibility of polling stations. Polling centers were located in public schools and other open places which were accessible. However, some polling stations were not accessible to persons with disabilities. Some polling centers had challenges to properly organize voters due to a limited number of ushers and also the non-availability of signs. Voters were arranged in alphabetical order, but this was not the case in some polling centers. The Commission observed that prisoners were allowed to vote. However, the Commission observed a number of challenges which contributed to the low voter turnout among prison voters. The inaccessibility of some polling stations to persons with disabilities and older persons is a direct violation of their right to non-discrimination and right to participate in public life. The state is obligated to provide reasonable accommodation to ensure that all citizens, including those with disabilities, can exercise their right to vote freely and effectively. The observation that prisoners were able to vote is a positive step towards upholding the right to political participation of all citizens. Opening of polling stations. Most polling stations opened between 6 o'clock and 6:30 in the morning. Some of the factors that contributed to the delays in opening polling stations include the following. Some election officials and candidate representatives came late to the polling stations. Non-functional biometric verification devices. The Commission noted that voters who were delayed due to delays in the opening times for the polling centers were compensated by the same lost time at the close of the polling process as guided by the law. Availability and conduct of security personnel. The presence of Malawi Defense Force, MDF, and the Malawi Police Service officers were observed, contributing to a calm and peaceful environment across all visited centers. These officers acted professionally. The deployment of these security personnel was gender compliant with a good combination of both male and female officers. The presence of security personnel is crucial for ensuring a safe and peaceful environment for all voters, protecting the right to security of a person and the right to vote without fear of violence or intimidation. The gender-compliant deployment of security personnel is a positive step towards ensuring that the security presence is sensitive to the needs of all voters and promotes an inclusive and welcoming environment. Availability of polling staff, candidate representatives, and observers. Save for exceptional instances, all polling stations visited had adequate polling staff. The officers were available in all the polling stations, and they were relatively effective in their respective roles. Some of them were ushering and directing voters, while others were taking them through the voting process. The effectiveness of these officers could be seen in the orderliness of the polling stations. However, it was observed that in some instances, these officials were not adequately trained in their roles. All polling stations had party and candidate representatives who monitored the voting process. The monitors were stationed at strategic positions to ensure that they monitored the voting process. Apart from party and candidate representatives, there were local and international observers observing the voting. The presence of well-trained and effective polling staff is essential for a smooth and fair electoral process, upholding the right to a genuine periodic election. The assistance provided to the elderly and persons with disabilities is a crucial component of ensuring the right to accessibility and non-discrimination is upheld. The presence of candidate representatives and observers is vital for promoting transparency and accountability in the electoral process. Actual voting. Voting was generally orderly and peaceful in most of the polling stations. The majority of registered voters who turned up to vote were able to vote. In isolated cases, some voters were sent back because their names did not appear in the specific polling center's register, despite having registered at that specific center. Ballot boxes were positioned at places where they could be seen by everyone, including the polling station officers and monitors. Voters who required assistance were adequately assisted, either by a trusted assistant of their choice or the presiding officers at each center. The use of voting booths and transparent ballot boxes ensures the secrecy of the ballot and the integrity of the vote count, both of which are critical for upholding political rights. The isolated cases of voters being sent away due to registration issues were concerning and are an infringement on the right to vote. The state has an obligation to maintain an accurate and transparent voter register to prevent disfranchisement. The proper assistance provided to voters who required it is a key component of protecting the right to non-discrimination and ensure that all eligible citizens can cast their vote. Closing of polling stations. Most polling stations closed at or around 4 o'clock in accordance with the law. Voters who were already in a queue before the closing time were allowed to vote. The presiding officers placed one polling station officer behind the last person in the queue to mark the closure of the stations. The polling stations closed following the laid down procedures. The adherence to closing times and the provision of additional time for stations that open late is a good practice that protects the right to vote for all eligible citizens. Allowing those already in the queue to vote is particularly important as it ensures that no one is unjustly denied their right to participate due to delays. This demonstrates a commitment to procedural fairness and the principle of universal suffrage. Vote counting and the management of results. The process of counting votes commenced immediately after the polling centers closed. In a room located within the polling center, the Commission observed that stations were provided with gas and solar lamps for lighting during counting. However, in some instances, the lighting was not adequate, and the rooms were not spacious enough, thereby making vote counting difficult. Final results for each polling station were signed by MEC officials as well as candidates and the party representatives, who were also given copies of the results before they were transported to constituency tally centers. The presiding officers were observed explaining the packing procedures of votes and related documents to the candidate representatives and the observers before taking them to the constituency tally centers. The transparency of the vote counting process, including the involvement of candidate representatives, and the public announcement of results is essential for ensuring credible elections and upholding the right to transparency and accountability. The use of gas and solar lamps and the occasional inadequate lighting raise concerns about the efficiency and the accuracy of the counting process. The ability of all parties to observe and sign the results sheets is a critical safeguard against fraud and manipulation, reinforcing public trust in the electoral system. Welfare of polling officials. The Commission observed that the polling officials were exposed to the following. 1. Harsh weather conditions such as the scorching sun. Working for long hours without resting. Working without being provided with refreshments and food. Working without being paid their subsistence allowances. The conditions in which polling officials worked amount to human rights violations. In some instances, this forced some polling officers to abandon their workstations before completing their tasks. The Malawi Electoral Commission must ensure that it prioritizes the welfare of all polling officials. Conclusion. On the basis of what has been observed so far, the Commission has noted that the elections have been orderly and peaceful. Mhrc has demonstrated capacity in the delivery of polling materials and the deployment of staff to all the polling centers. As results continue to be tallied at the constituency, district, and national tally center, the Commission is calling upon all the people in Malawi to remain calm, vigilant, and peaceful as they await Mhrc to announce the national election results. The Commission further calls upon party leaders, candidates, and supporters to desist from engaging in any acts of violence or acts that may incite violence, including an official declaration of results. End of the preliminary statement. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Zavala, for delivering the report on behalf of the whole Commission. When we are starting, we had introductions, and we have been joined by two commissioners from the Malawi Human Rights Commission. That is Commissioner Kwanunkha, and then we also have Commissioner Maria. Most welcome. We'll proceed to a summary version of the same report in Chichewa, which will be done by Commissioner Massa. But before we do so, let me also just recognize the presence of the following institutions that were invited to attend this presentation. So I recognize the UNDP Resident Coordinator's Office and all senior officials from UNDP. We also have the presence of the Senior Human Rights Advisor from the Office of the UN Resident Coordinator. Then we have in here representatives from the Irish Embassy, the British High Commission, the Embassy of Ireland. I also see Malawi Society is here. Thank you so much for gracing this occasion, plus all media houses present. As we proceed, before we wind up, we will now ask Commissioner Massa to read a detailed summary of the same report. This report is available and will be shared in soft copy soon after this presentation, if that has not already happened. So we'll make it available to all members present. Thank you.
Zikomo kwambiri. ndiwerenga ripoti imene Malawi Human Rights Commission apanga kutsatira zisankho zimene zinachitika pa 16 September mchaka cha 2025 pa chisankho cha president, nduna komanso makhansala. Bungwe la Malawi Human Rights Commission ndi bungwe limene linakhazikitsidwa ndi malamulo a dziko lino la Malawi, constitution yathu, komanso ndi bungwe limene limagwira ntchito yake potsata lamulo lake lalikulu la Human Rights Act limene linakhazikitsa bungwe limeneli. Bungwe la Malawi Human Rights Commission inatenga nawo mbali potumiza anthu kuyang'anira chisankho cha chaka chino mu maboma 27. Cholinga cha ntchito imeneyi inali kuonetsetsa kuti chisankho chaenda bwino, chaenda mabata, komanso kuonetsetsa zotsamwitsa zina zilizonse zimene zingapezeke pa nthawi ya chisankhoyi. Ndingopereka mfundo zikuluzikulu zimene zalembedwa mu ripoti yathu. Choyambirira zinthu zimene commission yaona kuti zinaenda bwino. Commission yapeza kunena kuti katundu amene anzathu a Mhrc anatumiza ogwiritsa ntchito pa nthawi ya chisankho anafika pa nthawi yake, komanso anali okwanira madera onse a dziko lino la Malawi. Pa nkhani ya anthu ovota, commission yapezanso kunena kuti anthu anatuluka ochuluka pa tsiku lovota, komanso anavota mabata ndi mtendere. Ngakhale kuti panali mizere ikuluikulu makamaka ku gawo la kummawa, koma ku gawo la kumadzulo inaoneka kuti mizere inali yochepa. Nkhani ya chitetezo, commission yapeza kuti anzathu a asilikali ankhondo a Malawi Defense Force komanso anzathu a polisi Malawi Police Service anagwira ntchito mothandizana kupereka chitetezo pa tsiku la chisankho, malo onse amene chisankho chimachitikira, komanso malo amene amawerengera zisankho, ma constituency study center komanso ma district study center ndi ma polling station. Kuponya voti kwa anthu osiyanasiyana makamaka aulumali ndi achikulire ndi azimayi. Commission inapezanso kuti pa nthawi ya chisankhoyi anthu amaulumali okalamba ndi azimayi anapatsidwa danga loponya voti, komanso anathandizidwa ndi anthu ogwira ntchito ku Mhrc, komanso munthu amene iwo anamusankha mwini wake kuti aponye voti yawo. Kuponya voti poyera, commission yapezanso kuti pa tsiku loponya voti zinthu zinachitika pa mbalambanda, malo oponyera voti, kabokosi kamene anthu amapatsidwa danga kuti akaponyemo voti zinayikidwa malo oti aliyense amatha kuona, malo amene amalembe munthu amalolidwa kuti akalembepo kusankha voti yake anayikidwanso malo oonekera woti wina aliyense amatha kuona zimene zimatha kuchitika pa tsiku limeneli. Kuphatikizaponso akuluakulu a Mhrc komanso anthu oyimira zipani zosiyanasiyana ndi anthu amene anatumidwa ndi mabungwe osiyanasiyana kuti aonerere chisankho chimenechi. Zotsamwitsa zina ndi zina zimene commission yapeza. Choyambirira, commission yapeza kuti anzathu ogwira ntchito ku Mhrc analandira nkhanza zosiyana makamaka pa nkhani ya chakudya, komanso panapezeka kuti tsiku limeneli anakhazikitsidwa pa dzuwa, komanso ovota ani ake anali pa dzuwa limene linali lochuluka kwambiri pa tsiku limeneli, limene linapangitsa kuti ufulu wawo uphwanyidwe. Kusapezeka kwa chakudya ndi mathandizo ena ndi gawo limodzi lophwanya ufulu la anthu ogwira ntchito amene amathandiza chisankho chimenechi. Panapezekanso kuti ogwira ntchito ena sanalandire ndalama zawo malipiro awo pa tsiku limene amagwira ntchito, zimene zinapangitsa kuti nawonso asalandire, asakhale ndi mwayi opeza chakudya kapena mathandizo awo a tsiku ndi tsiku. Kuchedwa ndi kutsegula kwa malo oponyera voti. Commission yapeza kuti malo ena oponyera vote anachedwa pa zifukwa zingapo. Chifukwa choyamba chinali chokuti ogwira ntchito anabwera madera ena anabwera mochedwa komanso mamonita amene amayimira zipani anafikanso mochedwa malo ena. China chimene chinapangitsa kuti malo ena ayambe kuvota mochedwa inali vuto la mashini amene amagwiritsidwa ntchito pa chisankho chimenechi amene nthawi zina madera amene anachedwa kuti ayambe kugwira ntchito yake. Kusapezeka kwa malo oyenerera kwa anthu amaulumali. Commission inapeza kuti madera ena amene chisankho chimapangidwiridwa sanali malo oyenerera kwa anthu amaulumali. Zinapangitsa kuti amaulumali akhalemo avote koma anavota movutikira kusiyana ndi amalawi anzawo. Kukanidwa kwa ovota ena. Commission yapezanso kuti ovota ena anakanidwa ngakhale dzina lawo linapezeka ngakhale anali ndi chiphaso chovotera pamalo amene anafika koma dzina lawo silinapezeke mukaundula wa ndondomeko ya ovota pa tsiku limeneli ndipo anabwezedwa sanathe kuponya nawo vote. Nkhani ya kuwerengera mavoti. Commission yapezanso kuti malo ena amene amawerengera mavoti anapezeka ndi vuto la kuwala kumene kunapangitsa ogwira ntchito kuti agwire ntchito movutika komanso kuwala mu makalasi amene amawerengera kunali kochepa kwambiri. Pomaliza, Commission ikutsindika kunena kuti chisankho ngakhale chisankho chayenda mwabata ndi mwadongosolo zotsamwitsa zimene zinalipo zapangitsa kuti ntchito ina isayende bwino. Komanso Commission ikupempha amalawi onse kuti pamene tikudikirira kuti chisankho anzathu a Malawi Electoral Commission alengeze chisankho likhale odekha abata komanso atsogoleri ndi ena onse andale auze owatsatira kuti akhale mwamtendere ndi bata pamene tikudikirira kuti anzathu ameki aulutse zotsatira za chisankho chimenezi. Zikomo kwambiri.
Zikomo kwambiri, Commissioner Mhrc, and once again, thanks to Commissioner delivery of the report. Before close this meeting, there might be an opportunity maybe for some clarification, one or two questions, either from the media or other members here. Before I ask the commissioners to close this meeting, we might have a question or two in the commission, particularly focusing on our report. And like the Deputy Executive Secretary said, this is an interim report. We are still observing up to the final processes until we make the results. As a commission, we are going to have a final report that will be delivered once we are ready anytime soon. So this is preliminary on the basis of what we have observed so far. Are there any areas for clarification before I ask the commissioners to close, then we can have refreshments? Yes, ask.
Thank you. My name is John Popa. I am a journalist from Zodiac. Allow me to extend my question, although it is not managed from the statement that you read, but it is something that touches on some of the issues that you have raised. The call that you are making is that people should remain calm, vigilant, as they wait for the results to be announced. Lately, we have seen that there are some parties that are coming out to say, to declare that they have won the election. And just this morning, one candidate for political party that was competing in the election went to Facebook, to social media, to make allegations that the election may have been rigged. Those allegations have been made on social media. As I'm speaking, they are making rounds on the social media. as a commission, with the call that you're making that people should remain calm, are you concerned with such statements being made, especially coming from candidates in this election? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. John Paul Kayuni. I believe that was the only question. So, commissioners, you can guide in terms of who is presenting the response. After that, I'll ask the acting chair for the closing remarks, and we're going to have a closing prayer. I think so far there's only one question.
You want to take it?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. John Paul Kayuni from Zodiac. If you look at our statement that we have just released, we have emphasized in the conclusion on the same. Our expectation is that political parties will remain calm and wait for the due process. The law make 8 days after the pause, so they are within the law. So our expectation is that political parties are going to also remain calm and follow the law up until the whole process is concluded. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Chabula. Like I observed, I think we only had one person for clarification, which means we are now proceeding to the close of this meeting. Commissioner Kwanunkha, if you want to chip in.
Thank you very much. I think you asked about that the person is alleging rigging. Certainly what the person is doing is illegal. As we know, the Mhrc chair has been announcing that if they have complaints, they need to go formally to Mhrc, they need to write, not go on social media. So the commission does not condone unlawful means of declaring things. So that person has to go and do it properly. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we also call upon the mainstream media to take up your role in terms of making sure that you also help curb the misinformation and disinformation that we have seen in this process. So we call upon you to also extend your role in terms of demystifying all misinformation and disinformation that is coming into the process during this period. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Commissioners Kwanunkha and the Commissioner Chabula, for chipping in to further clarify on the question that was raised. At this point, allow me to call upon Commissioner Lewis for her closing remarks. After that, you have a closing prayer, and that will be the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chis. Fellow commissioners, our partners, media, I would like in closing to thank you so much for your time to listen to our interim report on the observations that we have noted in the electoral process this far. As we have emphasized, this is an interim report. So the final report will contain a lot of specifics. As you have noted, we have just provided a summary. The Commission continues to monitor. As we are all aware, this is a process. It hasn't yet been finalized. So we continue to monitor what is happening as the results are trickling in, and we'll continue to provide updates where need be. So thank you so much on behalf of the Commission for your time and for paying attention to our report presentation. Amainda Bambo, tithokoze kwambiri maloma Malawi Human Rights Commission kuti munajiona jantengo batali kutenga nthawi yanu kuzamvera report yathu komanso kufusa mafuso. Ife ngati Malawi Human Rights Commission tikutsindika kuti report yomwe tapereka lero ndi report yoyamba ndemona kuti zambiri mwina kutchula ma centers ka kutchula the specific issues sitinayike ifati nangopanga summarize koma report ya pamapeto ikhala ndi ma details ambiri ndeti kuthokozeni chifukwa cha nthawi ya
osayiwala kupanga subscribe ku channel ya AMTV Malawi.